Sameera. Some of you know me, Sam. Thank you. That was my whole talk. Today I'm going to talk about Curaçao. It's where I grew up. It's a tiny little island, and I really like it, so I thought I'd talk about it. Kyle picked my topic, and Dawn art directed a lot of it, so shout out to both of them. Everything else I had was food related, so Kyle was like, maybe pick something not. But there's a food slide, I promise. Well, actually, like 4. So to make the little tail on the C, it's option C on a Mac. I don't know it for Windows, and I didn't look it up. Sorry. We are up there. It's down there. Clearly. I'm actually not sure if there's a direct flight. I just made that up. But you could get a once-a-week direct flight from JFK, go 4 times a day from Miami, once a day from Atlanta, and that's it. Yeah, that's about it. It's an island of about 150,000-ish people. And we all know each other, too. You've heard me say it, so Curaçao is how I would say it in English, or in American English. In Dutch, it's Curaçao. In Spanish, it's Curaçao. And then in a Portuguese creole that is local to the island, to Aruba, Bonaire, Saint Martin, and Saint Eustatius, which are a whole part of another former country, you would say Corso. How it gets pronounced at bars is Curacao. We'll come back to why in a little bit, but that's really because of the C with a tail. It's roughly 182 square miles. It's 60 miles across at its longest. It's a really awkwardly shaped island. It looks kind of like lips, but if you smush, like that's what it looks like. And in its most smushed part, it's 2 miles tall. So it's really little. That's about 444 kilometers, and that includes a tiny little island that has an abandoned lighthouse off the coast. That's what our flag looks like to represent island and tiny island off the coast. Geographically, that is incorrect because the tiny island is actually at the southeast of the island. So the little star is not where it should be. But that's okay. The blue is for the ocean, and the gold-yellow band is for the richness of the island. So really, really strong there. It's one of the newest countries, which is really exciting. As of October 10th, 2010, instead of being the capital of the former Netherlands Antilles, or the Dutch Caribbean, it branched off and became its own country within the Dutch kingdom. So that's really exciting. Super fun. The former Netherlands Antilles were made up of the ABC Islands, Aruba, Bonaire, and Curaçao, and then Saba, Saint Eustatius, and I forgot the last one, Saint Martin. I should know that one. Just the Dutch side, not the French side. As of right now, Aruba, Curaçao, and the Dutch side of Saint Martin, which is spelled differently than the French side of Saint Martin. The 3 that are asterisked are independent countries. The others have lost their countryship or have voted to not be countries and just became provinces of the Netherlands instead. And I think they all use the dollar now as their predominant currency, which I don't fully understand why. Aruba has a Aruban florin, or a guilder. Curaçao and Saint Martin both use the Dutch guilder, but it wasn't the same as the Dutch guilder before the EU stuff happened. So it was another guilder. It was the other Dutch guilder. So we called it the florin. That's what downtown looks like. That's just all shops, pretty much. That's like a fabric store owned by the same super locally well-known Jewish family. That's a hotel. That's a former fort turned into the hotel. That's the main government parliament building. That's a ferry that'll take you to this side. This is a little pontoon bridge that just swings open and closed so that cruise ships can pass by and go into the bay. I think this is where I had notes about how, a really long time ago, this is a really giant bay. So there's a dry dock that a lot of ships are repaired at. Dry docks are really cool and really scary at the same time because when you get that close, they're basically docks that they bring the boats in, take all the water out, repair what they need to, fill it back up, and then let the boats out. But when you're a little kid like I was and you're standing over it and your sister's like, I'm so gonna push you in, it's a little scary. So we have one of those. We have in this same neighborhood, you can't really see it back here, we have the oldest and longest functioning Jewish synagogue in the Western Hemisphere that's been continuously running since 17 something. And we have 2 on the island. A lot of our history is tied to mostly Sephardic Jews from Spain. So that's a big part of the island culture and a big part of our population. We used to be, unfortunately, a slave marketplace island because of a lot of boats coming in, so we have a huge slave history. We have a native population of Arawaks that are also a part of our history. So we're kind of a mishmash, and you probably saw what the languages that I listed for. Most people that you stop on the street speak those 4. They would use English for TV or radio. They'd use Spanish because we're 40 miles north of Venezuela, 60 miles northeast-ish of Colombia, so we're really close by. A lot of TV and radio there too, but all of our farmers markets are actually a fisherman's market where they come to parts of this bay and just tie up and then sell you stuff. And they're not all fishermen. I don't know why I said that. I just meant people on boats. Like, they have like avocados and stuff too. Papiamentu is more of the language of the arts, and it's more street talk, it's more ordering food, yelling at people in traffic. You yell at people in traffic, but you don't use your horn for that. That is to say hello to someone you recognize in the car over. And then Dutch is really more financial, banks, and then all of the schools except for 2 are Dutch. The 2 other ones are American accredited schools, and I went to one of them. This is kind of what it looks like. These are old houses. These are now kind of historically protected parts of our architecture. So we have this somewhat Dutch style. With the other ones you saw, they're kind of stacked and tall, and that's pretty common to see if you've ever been to the Netherlands, which I know based off of Mike's tag yesterday that your favorite place was Amsterdam. So that sort of architecture, but then you get this bright Latin American sort of color. The mustard yellow with the white trim is the most common that you'll see across the board. So you'll see that here, but the white trim is pretty common. You'll notice probably also plantation style windows. Lots of that comes from the slave history on the island. And then just brightly colored buildings. Now these are all protected. We're a UNESCO World Heritage Site in that downtown area that I had the aerial photo of. We're also, as you would expect, in the Caribbean, a very beach-heavy place with some great scuba diving. We're a volcanically formed island. I say we, like I am the island. The island is volcanically formed. It's on the edge of a plate, so there is a harsh drop-off that you can see here between that bright color and then the deep cut. That's at least a few hundred feet, so you get a few diving atmospheres down, and it's huge for diving for that reason. It's also why people say Curacao at bars, is because there is a orange liqueur made out of the rind that is, you can sub in triple sec for any drink for it, but it's dyed blue to match the color of the water. There's nothing actually blue about it. It's full-on boozy food coloring. So that's fun. This one is specifically for Kyle. So if you've maybe heard about Curaçao, you've maybe been there on a cruise, right? Did you go there on a cruise? Just a vacation, nice. Most people go for a cruise. So they were like, yeah, we've been there for a day. But other than that, it's known, if you ever had to read the K or Timothy of the K in middle school, that started in Curaçao. No one had to read that in middle school. It was like a required reading. One person. Okay. I had to read it too, but that was sort of like, this is where you're from and there's a book about your island. For Major League Baseball, there's a lot of different players. Kyle's favorite is Didi Gregorius from the New York Yankees. Woo. Andrew Jones is probably the most famous one to come from the island. He played for the Braves, then for New York, and then I think now plays for a major team in Japan. He was pretty big in the 90s when they were winning World Series against the Yankees. Sorry. They lost. Well, okay. Oh, okay. I remember it differently. They told us differently on the island. But he would come back a lot, and because this was kind of the most prominent person, he started to create a lot of opportunities for kids like himself who didn't have opportunities to have great coaches or have a safe place to be after school if their parents couldn't pick them up, and put a lot of baseball fields around the island. And that led to us having a little league team that has won the world championship on multiple occasions, to the point that you can watch a movie about them on Amazon, not on Netflix, maybe on Hulu, called The Boys of Summer. And a lot of those players now play for the Baltimore Orioles. The other, right? Orioles are from Baltimore? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Texas Rangers, the Profar brothers. So there's quite a few. And then if you want to learn more about the slave history in Curaçao and the slave revolt that happened there kind of many years before slavery changed in the United States, there's a movie starring Danny Glover that was shot on the island about Tula, who was the main slave revolter there. And I'm sure I'm forgetting other stuff, but let's talk about food. So, lekker eten, douche. I mixed two languages in one sentence. That tends to happen there a lot in conversation, that you'll switch between them, especially with the Portuguese creole, because it has English, Spanish, and Dutch in it as well. Lekker is a great word to know in Dutch. It's sort of a catch-all for anything good. It can mean delicious. It could be just good, wonderful. If you had a lekker day, like today's going to be a lekker day, you could say that, but usually it's associated with food. Similarly, in Papiamentu, you would say douche, which sounds horrible. Like, anyone is like, did you just call me douchey? Like, I'm not. But it's actually the nicest thing that you can say to someone. It's a term of endearment. It could be something that's delicious. It could be something that's so sweet. Like, oh, look at the photos of Dawn's kiddo. Like, she's so douchey, like her little cheeks. Like, she's a little sweet, like, wrapped up little adorable burrito baby. Which I say to Dawn all the time. So it's kind of another catch-all. So that's two words that you could now use related to food or other things. To your left, that is a pastechi. So imagine a ton of Gouda, like good Dutch aged Gouda, melted inside of that, and then eating that. It is the most common snack you'll find. Like, food trucks are everywhere, and they usually operate between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. So you're used to getting a lot of breakfast there, a lot of late night food. The next thing over is a croquette, or you've probably had that in some version. There you'll find it there made with meats, or you'll even find it with conch meat. And just some good mustard over it, and snacking on that is like a great thing. Satay sauce. So we have a history too of the Dutch East India Company coming back to the West Indies, to the Dutch West Indies Company. So a lot of Indonesian food is pretty common there. So we have Indonesian rice tables, or rijsttafels, and a lot of satay sauce. So that's served with French fries from those food trucks and lamb, and you eat that at 4 in the morning when you're like, all right, we should probably sober up and go home. Pretty common. You can put it on everything, and people do put it on everything. Being an island, we have a lot of seafood as well. Most commonly, red snapper served whole with just a spice rub and some cuts, and then French fries that would then have bean sauce on top of that. Just to clarify, lots of places serve blue Curaçao, but it's not really blue Curaçao if it's not from Curaçao, and that's just me being like, no, it's not real. Like, you should have the real stuff. If you ever see the bottle on the left, it feels like an orange rind on the outside. It has the same dimpling. That's the genuine. They've even changed the labels. They used to call it Curaçao of Curaçao, but now they've decided to not have to explain themselves further and just go with the genuine Curaçao. The one on the right, which we typically see, yeah, and you're right, that we typically see at bars or that you can buy at whatever liquor store is in your area, is usually bottled in Kentucky or blue Kentucky. Finally, if you ever find yourself in Curaçao, let me know, because this is my dad. He's a pretty cool guy. He's known for taking great photos by the ocean while drinking scotch. So if you ever want to find out, have a tour guide on the island who would love to have peanut sauce with you, or peanut sauce and scotch, let me know and I'll introduce you to my dad. Thank you.